Like our fingerprint, God has given us a unique life that shapes who we are and who we become. We experience the high times to bring us joy, and the low times to make us better, which makes life worth living and worth sharing. It's not really about the life you've been given, rather it's what you make of it. And so I give you the life of Roger Bucholtz. In 1921, the U.S. was in a depression and times were tough. Hope and celebration came with President Harding's announcement of ending World War I. William Frederick Bucholtz and his wife Claire Grimm celebrated for a different reason, the birth of their only son, Roger William. Soon after, celebrating 2 years later with the birth of their second daughter, Virginia, their eldest, Florence, contracted scarlet fever, leaving her with significant brain damage. This was only the beginning of a life that would become far from perfect. One afternoon, Frederick was digging a tunnel into his parents' home when suddenly the dirt caved in, burying him alive. Claire attempted to give her children to relatives so that she could find work, but soon felt the best option was to split up the family. This meant sending Roger to the orphanage in Davenport, Iowa. At the age of 4, Roger's understanding of family looked much different. Imagine growing up without parents to love you, where birthdays consisted of a 10-cent gift and a piece of cake. And oh yes, Christmas, you received an orange. You were only issued 2 sets of clothes, one to wear while the other was being washed. And those were to last you the entire year. Did he ever reconnect with his mother? Roger provides further insight.
I knew where I was, and I didn't know where she was because she was moving around. And Pentecost postcard cost a penny. A letter cost 3 cents stamp. And I never once heard from her. But my aunt from Decorah come and picked me up when she died, and I went over to Illinois to her funeral.
In his teen years, Roger was sent to live with a family and help out on their farm. Working long hours led to meals and a place to sleep, never receiving the money he was promised. Certainly a form of slavery in my mind. Through this, Roger learned you must fight to survive. He funneled this energy into sports, where he excelled as a football player and a Golden Gloves boxer. Soon after graduating from high school, Roger began his new life back in Waterloo, Iowa, where he was born, and stayed with an aunt. As fate would have it, one Sunday morning he was invited to church by one of his former friends from the orphanage, and there he meets the love of his life, Laura Shirley Bixby. Their first date consisted of Roger taking Laura to the Klondike for an ice cream bar. Cost 5 cents each. As sparks began to fly, the relationship would soon be put on hold as Roger, like his father once did, chose to serve our country. He served in the Navy and was stationed in Pearl Harbor during World War II for 28 months. Roger was put in charge of the food for the base and submarines. While others would occupy their time getting tattoos and drinking booze, Roger spent most of his time thinking about Laura and writing love letters. The war would end and a new chapter in Roger's life would begin, finally experiencing the joys of love. He marries Laura on December 17, 1944 during a 30-day leave. It's fascinating how one who did not receive love in life somehow was able to love in such a deep way. I suppose his favorite flower, the bleeding heart, was an indication of his desire to love and to be loved. Over 70 years of marriage must be a sign he's doing something right. Roger's knowledge and work ethic drew the attention of his commanding officer, who offered him a bookkeeping position with Safeway grocery stores out in San Francisco. The two tried it for a short time until Laura decided moving closer to family was more important, so they returned to Waterloo. Roger worked hard to provide for the two financially, sometimes working 2 jobs at a time. Never had a lot of money, but never went hungry. He worked for a grocery store, an oil company on Rainbow Drive, the bakery, Prudential Insurance, Bing's Furniture, and John Deere. At John Deere, he began in the foundry and through his hard work was promoted to an office position. He and Laura were committed to living off his paycheck and putting Laura's into savings. Roger never believed in spending money he didn't have, never even owned a credit card. So once they were able to save enough money, they purchased their first home, $10,000 in cash. For nearly 60 years, they would call 2912 Scenic Drive in Cedar Falls home. As they continued to enjoy time with each other and with friends, they decided that beginning a family would be the next step. Unfortunately, what seems to be easy for others became a continuous battle filled with miscarriages and disappointments. That is, until October 9th, 1952, when Roger and Laura had a healthy baby girl, Jo Marie Shirley Bucholtz. Faith was important to the family, so they spent their Sundays attending the First Church of the Open Bible in Waterloo. Weekends in the summer were spent camping with friends. Jo Marie grew up as an ideal daughter and enjoyed her childhood that focused more on love than material things, because Roger believed money should be saved and not spent. Heck, he'd even drive across town if gas was 1 cent cheaper per gallon. Roger did see value in a reliable car and would purchase a new vehicle, of course, always paying cash. Now, like her parents, Jody too had a friend at church, Marlis Bauer, who had a strapping older brother. Sparks flew, and on May 12, 1972, Keith and Jody married and became one. Walking her down the aisle was a very special moment for Roger. A skill Roger was known for was playing the harmonica. It creates a beautiful sound, but the harmonica was likely appealing because it is cheap and can be carried in a pocket. Roger had several harmonicas he would give to his grandsons, hoping one day they'd pick up the craft. That day has yet to come. Roger had a fond interest in airplanes. Sure, it's one thing to collect model planes and trains, but for Roger that wasn't enough. He would eventually learn to fly and obtained his pilot's license. Throughout the course of his life, he owned 4 planes. By far his favorite, the red biplane, was named Amy Jo after his granddaughter. To Roger, everything took a back seat to loving his family. He chose to no longer fly and decided to invest in the lives of his 3 grandchildren, Amy, Scott, and me, Jason. Although Roger loved lighthearted fun, he was known much more for his giving. Whatever he gave to one grandkid, the same amount was given to the other 2. No favorites. On their 14th birthdays, each received a moped. On their 18th, each received a car. More importantly, over the years, Roger and Laura put money away for each of their college education. Interesting how 2 people who never had the opportunity to attend college provided this better life. The 3 grandkids participated in all the sports, and attending these events was a must for Roger and Laura. Roger was never known for his patience. I recall Thanksgiving dinner where my family arrived 15 minutes late, and Roger had already begun eating. It was common for Roger and Laura to beat the team bus to the game, of course finding them in the top row of the bleachers, where the wall serves as a backrest. Roger was always quick to hand the grandkids a pack of Wrigley's gum before the games and give performance incentives, such as $1 for strikeouts and $5 for a home run. Now, because Roger and Laura saved up in their younger years, they were able to provide a much better life for their grandkids that they themselves never experienced. I was fortunate to play college basketball for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and attending the home games was a must for Roger and the rest of the family. Going out to eat afterwards was a highlight, Roger and Laura always picking up the tab. To get a glimpse of how important these games were to Roger, he and his nephew, Gary Bixby, made a road trip to the Northwestern game in an all-out blizzard. His suitcase contained only the essentials: blankets, toothbrush, and a change of underwear. Roger spent much of his time hanging out with the radio broadcasters, and his loyalty paid off and was mentioned on the radio. Even in his later years, Roger enjoyed watching game tape. His favorites were the Sweet 16 game against UConn and Iowa's win over number 6 Kansas, snapping their 63 home game win streak. Now, traveling was one thing Roger really enjoyed. He and Laura visited 49 of the 50 states. Although Laura had no interest, in 2007, Roger visited his last state with Jody, Keith, and me to the great state of Alaska. You get to a point in life where you're far from your prime and your body just can't do the things it once could. You're forced to humble yourself and rely on others more and more. Hard to do for a guy who has never had anything given to him, rather survived on his work ethic, drive, and common sense. I can't help but wonder what it's like spending your last days confined to a bed, feeling uncomfortable, always being in pain, with little interaction with others. So I asked him, Grandpa, what in the world do you think about every day? Without hesitation, I think about Laura and the memories we made. There is joy in knowing that heaven will allow Roger and Laura to make more memories together. I realize that most of us have amazing grandparents that we love, but the exceptional ones, they make insurmountable sacrifices so that their kids and grandkids can have better lives than the ones they had to live. So how do you fully repay someone like Roger William Bucholtz? I don't think you can.